As usual, I just want you to take a couple of deep breaths and get ready for it. Okay? Ooh, man, deep breaths are so underrated, you know. All right, so let's go. Here is the passage on your screen as usual. Once you are done reading it, let me know in the comment box and I can take you over to the next slide. Let's start. So are we through with it? Should I take you over to the next slide? So Sonali, Nishant, Shraddha, Debashish. So are we through with it? Fantastic. So let's go ahead and switch over to our next two paragraphs. Okay, so here comes the last paragraph of the passage for you on your screen, and there you go. Okay, I see the query. Okay, so I hope by now you've read it. So some of you wanted to know the meaning of the word pursuant. Pursuant basically means, no, it's a formal word, right? So pursuant essentially means according to something, right? Usually that something is law. So simply put, you can replace pursuant with according to. So are we done with the passage? Should I take you over to the questions? Parity is, okay, parity. See, par basically means equal. So parity is roughly put equality. Some sort of similarity. So here, but specifically when you say purchasing power parity, so you know India has rupees, UK has pounds, US has dollars, Japan has yen, but then the amount of things that $1 buys may not be equal to the amount of things that 1 rupee goes on to buy, right? So how do you really compare? How do I know that somebody who earns say $4,000 in the US, where does he stand vis-a-vis somebody who earns say 40,000 rupees in India, right? So what do you do then? You try to figure out how much of the stuff, goods, services, etc. a rupee can buy in a particular country. So for example, if I pay 100 rupees for a haircut, then I'd go to the US and say, how much do you pay for a haircut in terms of dollars? And then you compare, and it's only then that you go ahead and compare different economies together, and that way of comparison is known as PPP, or purchasing power parity. Purchasing power parity comparity. Okay, so here is the question. So the first question for you: which of the following describes the central theme of the passage correctly? So main idea question, look at it closely and then pick up the best answer choice. Okay, so I've received A, I've received D. So let us see. We are looking at the main idea, right? What is this passage talking about? So essentially it started off by introducing the economic reforms done in 91 and 92, right? Thereafter, it goes ahead and talks about the shortcomings of the previous economic model being pursued. And then finally it talks about the benefits of the reform, right? That's roughly put the 3 core themes or 3 core ideas that emerge out of this passage. So let's look at A, the 91-92 economic reform in India and its effects. Okay, could be. B, the improvement of the Indian economy under the new economic policy. Now A and B are very similar. The only difference is, so those economic reforms of 91-92 are also referred to as new economic policy. The only difference is A also uses the word reform, B does not. And I think in the context of this passage, reform is better because we are talking about the changes that were brought about in 91-92 vis-a-vis what was done earlier. So reform is preferred. And as a result, if I compare A and B, I'd say A scores over B, so let's rule out B. C talks about the failure of India's socialism, that is narrow, as it talks about only a part of the passage and it misses out on the all important reform related factor. Then D says the post independence economic scenario in India. This is something that I will consider very broad. Why broad? If you talk about post independence, so imagine if I give you an essay to write where the topic is post independence economic scenario in India, will you just focus on the reforms of 91-92 and talk about the shortcomings of the earlier approach? Chances are that you would actually go ahead and delve into quite a few other areas as well. You talk about different sectors, agriculture, manufacturing, then introduction of services. So D covers a much wider gambit than what the passage actually focuses itself on. And therefore, I think D can also be eliminated. And thus the best answer choice is A. And you know what I've just done? I looked at D and I said, okay, think of it as an essay topic. This is what I know, what I typically call as the 180-degree approach, where any confusing answer choice, you look at it and then you think, okay, if I were to of that essay in your mind, you can go ahead and compare it with something that you've done earlier. Compare it with the passage and then see whether they match or not. So in the case of D, I think there will be a fairly largish mismatch and therefore we'd eliminate that. So A it is for question number 1. Here is the next one for you. Question 2. Slightly lengthy. Go through it, think it through, and then share your answer with me. Okay, so let's check first. The central nature of the Indian economic system under Indian socialism resulted in excessive red tape and bureaucracy. It is definitely mentioned as one of the problems involved with the so-called Indian socialism. So this is true. Second, dependence of the private sector on the public sector under socialism led to free market being unavailable. Yes, this is once again mentioned. Remember that the free market private sector, the space shrunk because of their dependence on the public sector. So this is definitely one of the challenges that have been highlighted in the passage. Third, socialism resulted in giving India free access to the international market. Oh, this is false. So the first half is not even mentioned. In fact, socialism, according to the passage, happened to have the opposite impact. And therefore, I'd say if I have to choose, I'd say first and second both are definitely criticisms leveled against Indian socialism in the passage. Third is false, and thus our answer should be B. And it turned out to be more or less what? A specific detail question, a fact-based question, where you fundamentally needed to refer to the first paragraph. Here is the next one for you. Okay, so we are being asked which of the following is not true. So let's check A. Despite the new economic policy, India continues to rely on the centre's 5-year plans. Now, according to the passage, we relied on these 5-year plans in that previous pre-91-92 era for sure. Do we do that after 91-92 as well? On the basis of the passage, this cannot be determined, and therefore the label that we should apply is can't say. Let's have a look at B. There was a marked decrease in India's share of GDP in Asia between 1950 and 1985. That's true. This is something that is mentioned in I think the second paragraph, where we went from around 25% to basically halves. C. Liberalization and deregulation were the key aspects of the new economic policy. True. D. The Indian standard of living has been exponentially increased because of the new economic policy. The last paragraph says that the standard of living has increased. So exponentially or not will be something that, so I'd say can't say only because of the use of the word exponentially, right? So now B and C are true. We are looking for something that is not true. So B and C are ruled out. So now what do I do? Between A and D, I need to pick up the better answer choice. So essentially, one of these two will have a higher probability of being true. That one should be eliminated. The other one should be opted for. So when it comes to A, we have no data at all. So I cannot comment on that probability. But when it comes to D, this is, although it is can't say, it leans more towards probably true. Since the rate of growth has increased significantly, remember we are surpassed only by China and no other nation in the entire world. So because the rate of growth has increased fair bit, the increase in the standard of living should also be a fair bit, and therefore exponential, although it does lean towards a higher degree than what the facts suggest, is still closer to being true. And therefore let's rule out D and opt for A as our answer. Okay, and here is one last question based on this passage, which asks you about the tone. Let us see how you deal with this. Okay, so let's see. First up, let's look at the meanings. Dogmatic is a negative word. Okay, dogmatic is somebody who holds on to a belief and is not open to discussion. Okay, so an unreasonable belief where you consider it true even when some evidence to the contrary is presented to you. So we definitely do not need a negative tone. So let's rule out D. I mean, at the end of the day, you can figure out whether the tone was positive, neutral, or negative, right? So it is definitely not negative. So dogmatic is out. How about apologetic? If you're apologetic when you say that, oh, something wrong was done in the past, and that's really so bad, that should not have happened. But why would the author apologize? It does, the passage does talk about something wrong that has happened in the past. But is the author responsible for it? A person becomes apologetic when that person is responsible for that act. The author is not. So C is also ruled out. That leaves you with benevolent and objective. Benevolent is a positive word. Benevolent basically means somebody who is kind, somebody who is charitable, somebody who essentially goes on to help others. So if I look at the etymology of this word, benevolent basically means of a good turn, a person who is of a good nature, right? So why would I really call the author kind or charitable? What has he gone on to help others? Has he indulged in charity in this passage? Is he the architect of those reforms which has uplifted the standard of living for the millions in the country? No. So even A is ruled out, and thus the only option that you'd be left with is B. So in objective, all that you do is you present facts without sharing your opinion, and that's exactly what the passage focuses on, and therefore the answer is B. So that's about the passage. Let's go ahead and look at the next set of 2 questions. So in these questions, you've been given a short paragraph with one of the lines missing, and in place of that line, in place of that sentence, there is a blank. Then there are 4 answer choices, and you are supposed to choose the one that fits into that blank the best. Okay, so here is the question with the paragraph. The blank in this case happens to be towards the end, as you can see. Have a look at the other 4, and then the 4 answer choices, and then we can discuss it. Okay, so I think if we go ahead and use elimination, A and B are easy to rule out. Why? The paragraph introduces something, then talks about the negative aspects, and then researchers talk about how or why this is important. Okay, the work is crucial for public health. It will drive the research into drugs and vaccine and help identify dangerous mutations to watch out for in the wild. So why this research needs to be carried out. So that essentially leaves you with C and D. So C essentially quotes something and then uses the pronoun they, which can refer to the researchers. So the sentence coming immediately before it is where researchers have said something and now we are quoting them. So the pandemic risk rises exponentially should these viruses acquire the ability to transmit readily among humans. So drugs and vaccines will help. D says scientists already track mutations in bird flu viruses found in patients, but this kind of surveillance does not give health authorities time to respond if they find a pandemic strain. So C versus D, what are your arguments? At the end of the day, it is your quality of argument which should determine the correct answer. The stronger the argument you are able to create, the better it is for you. So if I look at C essentially gives you a sentence which is more or less a reiteration of what comes right before the blank, right? So what is said in the blank before is again captured in the quote, whereas D talks about a factor that suggests that, oh, we are not going to be going by the current model, we are not going to be prepared for taking care of a pandemic strain. So which one of the two should we go ahead and choose? Should I go for a reiteration, or should I go for something that further supports what has been stated in the previous sentence? So when I talk about a particular paragraph, I'd say that a generic reiteration coming after the core point, that's going to be a pretty weak thing. So normally when there is a sentence that says or that captures an idea in a generic fashion, and then you have another sentence or set of sentences that talk about the same idea in a more specific way, then the generic sentence is put before the specific sentences, except for two situations that we have talked about in one of our previous sessions, right? So putting a generic statement afterwards that gives you more or less the same idea that has been already expanded upon, that will not be that coherent. On the other hand, D goes ahead and further substantiates it, and therefore that is likely to be preferred over C, and thus we'll go ahead and choose D here in this particular case. Okay, here is another question for you. This time around it is smaller, shorter, sweeter. Let's see what you choose. Virender, there are some icons on the chat. Let me see. Reiterations are not valid in this type. No, not at all. Let's not create a formula. In that specific situation, we are giving another idea which was essentially a reiteration, but it was not phrased as a reiteration. So can I say reiterations are not valid? No, not at all. Can you not reiterate something that you've already said? You can, but then you need to frame it as a reiteration. It was the same idea, but it was not framed as a reiteration. So when you have a generic idea and specific idea, generic idea goes first unless it is framed as a conclusion or a reiteration. Since it was not framed like that, we would like to ignore it. Divij, this particular question variety used to come in CAT quite a while ago. So no, that was not an actual CAT question, but these are questions that we have used in the past to coach CAT students. Okay, now B says such a device may even be crafted by us. Of course, man is trying to find out. Using solar panels is one such way. So why would we say may even be crafted by us? And why use the word even to emphasize? On the other hand, if I look at the idea before the blank and after the blank, you notice after the blank we're talking about this electricity. So you need to have something here that can be referred to by using the pronoun this, and that is mentioned only in C, and therefore C should be the answer. So if you look at the various things that you've learned in Jumbles, those things can actually help you arrive at the right answer here as well. So that's a bit on para completion. We'd of course in future work more on this. Here are a couple of odd one out questions. So 5 jumbled up sentences, 4 belong to the same paragraph, 1 does not. Your job is to figure out the one that does not. So here is your question number 7. Nishan, just give me a second here. I am also a tad bit surprised because the internet is alright at my end. Okay, so in case the issue was at my end, I've sort of managed to reboot whatever I want, whatever I could. Hopefully you'll be able to see and hear me. Although I think, you know, when nothing else works, you kind of do whatever you can. Okay, so what's your answer? So I have one answer. Divij, now you should be able to hear me. Yes. Okay, so the correct answer is indeed option 3. So see, we say Venice is a strange and beautiful city. Now 1, 5, 4 and 2 in this order, they essentially go ahead and talk about Venice. Third does talk about Venice, but then it focuses on a different aspect altogether. It talks about how Venice should be connected to some other cities. So that takes it beyond the scope of this particular paragraph, and therefore the answer should be 3. Here is the next one. So what's your take on question number 8? Okay. Now, if I were to treat it as a para-jumble, I see that 5 and 3, that's a mandatory pair. So they go together. But then look at first, when it says that may not be possible always, what may not be possible? In this context, this that can refer to what is mentioned in sentence 3. Now you're not always in a position to look up the meaning of a word immediately. So you have this 3 plus 1, and if you are not able to look it up immediately, what can you do? It must be firmly written on the memory and traced at the first opportunity. So you're not able to look it up immediately, in which case what do? Just keep it in your mind and then look it up later. So you have 1 plus 4, but then second talks about dictionary is the best thing to possess. Now yes, you are going to look up the meaning of the word in a dictionary, but second does not connect itself with any other word, any other sentence here. And that is why I'd say that our answer here should be second, and if you treat it as a para-jumble, 5, 3, 1, 4, it will be the paragraph that you could easily construct out of it. Right? So there you go. So that's why our answer is option 2. Now, before I proceed further, remember at the beginning I told you that in order to create these sessions which are more effective for you, sessions that work better for you, I need to know what it is that you want, right? So if you look at the comment box, there is a pinned comment that will take you to a Google form. Please make sure that you click on this and fill it out. You'd also find it in the description box in case you want to return to it in a while. But please do that so that I can create sessions which are absolute banger of a session which is relevant for you. And here is a thought. that I wanted to share with you. Keep your eyes on the finish line and not on the turmoil around you. When you go through life, a lot of things happen, but then that laser sharp focus on where you want to be, and then use a strategy that takes you there instead of getting caught up in the immediate